Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Tuesday stream, Monday stream. I knew that. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Monday stream. I hope everyone's having an awesome Monday morning. I do hope your life is coming back together. Thank you. We're doing all right. Mr. How's it going? We are doing A-okay. Today, um, today we find out just exactly what's going on with this. We're gonna find out exactly what's going on with this arm in about 3 hours. I should be I should be at the orthopedics, and hopefully, they'll tell me what's exactly going on. What happened to your life? Well, to my life, nothing. Nothing negative, anyways. Just got a busted elbow. I tried to leave Florida, but Florida just wouldn't let go. Memo for the record: what happened? No, I'm just referring to the arm. How's it going? That's what I'm asking about. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm all right. I'm well. The last two finals today, but they're back to back. Well, good luck on that. At least it's the last two finals, all right? At least it's not, the pain will be over soon, basically. Hey, Doc, how's it going? How have you been? I'm hanging in there. Buenos dias. Howdy. Yeah, so what happened, Memo, for the record, and for those folks who don't know, as I was trying to leave Florida, Florida would just wouldn't let go. And I broke my arm or elbow over here trying to move. And today, I go to the orthopedic doctor, and hopefully we get some good news. Yes, I was personally beat up by this is a very uh credible allegation that uh Ron DeSantis himself actually came out and tried to stop me from leaving Florida, like personally, and that's how this happened. That sucks, man. Sorry to hear that. It's okay. Sorry to hear this. It's okay. I'm sure that in its time, it will be healed. Yes, a skydiving accident. That's exactly what happened. As I was skydiving out of Florida. That's I'll go with that one. That one sounds much cooler. Yellow King coming in hot with a tier 1 sub. for 17 months. Jeez. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. I don't know which story I should go with. Ron DeSantis or a skydiving accident. I'll go with I'll go with I was skydiving out of Florida, but Ron DeSantis tried to mess with my deployment of the parachute, and that's what happened. That's the story that I'm allegedly sticking to. I think it's best to just say Bakita did it. Yeah, I could always just blame it. I could always just blame it on Bakita. That works. I'll just do that. I don't know. Maybe every time, like, hopefully, um, I get this thing off me today. But if I have to keep it on, I'm just gonna keep switching the stories around. Um, every time. Yeah, I was free falling for a while. That's right. That's how it happened, and I'm sticking to it. How's she doing? Bakita's chilling. Bakita's actually very, very, very happy. Um, I feel like she's less stressed. Yeah, I did a free fall without a parachute. That's it. Sure, I'll stick to that story. I can cycle these couple of stories every time somebody asks. I'll make them uh more ludicrous uh and more egregious each time. But you made it out at least? Yes, I did. Glad you're in good spirits. You're cray. I'm glad you're in good spirits. I'm definitely in good spirits because I'm hoping that I get some good news, but you know, it is what it is. I watched my cat crouch in my clothes to pee this morning, but I stopped her. She's in timeout. Oh no. Oof. Poor kitty. And naughty kitty at the same time. Glad you're out of Florida. Same. Same. So this will probably be the permanent, you know, the permanent location, the permanent studio setup. I think it's decent. We just gotta work on some stuff. But other than that, I think we're all right. I think we're doing all right. Just crossing my fingers and hoping that today we get some good news to get rid of this thing. This is by far one of the most annoying things to do everything with one hand. Um, what? There was no music? Wow. Uh, you could have moved out of Florida without mentioning it, and no one would be able to tell. I know. Isn't that the cool part, though? And I could even make it so that no matter where I am, I can make it look all the same no matter what. I can just green screen myself, take a picture of the background, and green screen myself in it. Not that you're not special, just your studio is cool like that. Exactly. It's meant to it's meant to be consistent. It's meant to be the same all throughout. That's the whole point. All right, folks, we do have. Oh, actually, um, in an attempt to get ourselves back on the saddle, there was. Okay. Okay, here we are. I think this one's it. I'm pretty sure this one's it here. Let's check it out. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. I'm still trying to get myself back on the saddle. Let's see if this one's it.
This will be followed.
I'm pretty sure this one's it right here.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and to those watching us from other parts of the world, good evening and good morning as well. My name is Andrej Mahecic, and I wish to welcome you to this press conference by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. I will be moderating today's press conference, which is dedicated to the latest IPCC report on the mitigation of climate change. We have a number of distinguished speakers today who will deliver brief statements. This will be followed by an official presentation of the report on mitigation of climate change. The instructions to the media about how to submit questions in the course of this press conference have already been sent out, and so for the members and the representatives of the media,
yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that this is it. Okay, Stash Game is on point. True. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that this is it here. Okay. First things first, we've got to talk about this. Yesterday, someone came in and said that Stephen Donzinger has been released from house arrest, which I'm gonna be honest, I don't know if this is just like the media not reporting on this, but I have not been able to see any articles whatsoever on this, except for like sparse, reporting here and there. But the good news is that it seems to be true. So that's very good news. Several days ago, yeah. I'm looking at that here. I had to really search for some articles to kind of just use as a illustration, because I'm gonna be honest, there hasn't been like a lot of mainstream media reporting. So yeah, that's kind of whew, that's kind of not good. It's very telling. There haven't been, maybe in the intercept, maybe. You've got to really look for it. I didn't know that until somebody pointed it out yesterday. But TLDR is that it is true he has been released from house arrest after like what, almost 1,000 days, because Chevron got really big mad that this dude took them to court because of the damage that they're doing still as part of the fossil fuel industry to the environment. More specifically, as the article states, damage to the Amazon rainforest. This dude cost them so much money that they decided to use the legal system, the judicial system, to try to bury this guy, which is unbelievable to me. I think we were talking about this yesterday, how it's just absolutely unbelievable that a corporation, an industry, can get so big, so powerful, that they can literally leverage the legal system to bury somebody that, took them to court for their own damages. I found out on Twitter because Chapo Will tweets about it. Ah, okay. Well, nonetheless, that's good news. I'm so glad that they released him from house arrest. It just goes to show how powerful the fossil fuel industry is to be able to do that in the first place. A freedom party was done and was attended by family, friends, actor Susan Sarandon, Amazon labor organizer Chris Smalls. Nice. Very, very good news. Can you imagine 1,000 days? Yeah, I couldn't. I couldn't even. Check Gizmodo for a good article on Donzinger. Can you send that to me via Whispers, Mister, by any chance? One thing I gotta admit, this edge of the splint is super itchy. It's annoying. Okay. James Napper always coming through. Always coming in hot with the sources there. This article, which relates to this new paper. Okay, so we gotta do it in order. Here. Oh, okay, wait. No, this is the actual study. Okay, gotcha. So this is the story I'm sorry, this is the study that's being sourced in this story. Okay, cool. This looks good to me. This is the abstract. Okay, yeah, it is behind a paywall, but we can read the abstract. Police union released statements in support of the officer who shot Patrick Leoa in the back of the head in Grand Rapids, and it's so awful and disturbing. Yeah, Jesus Christ, and there. That's horrifying. I mean, part of like as far as I can tell from all the videos, and trust me, they're there. If you want to search those videos, just be conscientious, or just be aware that it is very disturbing. Um, as far as I can tell, the way things played out in that scenario, it is unfathomable to me how this person was a police officer. It is unfathomable to me how this person was a police officer. Unbelievable. Just be aware that if and they're out there. Just be aware that if you look up this story, it is horrifying. It is just not a good thing to watch. Definitely one of the more underreported or under-researched elements of climate change. This is something Andreas Malm and others have highlighted about. Excuse me, about how many pandemics and outbreaks will be the new normal. Oh yeah. They kind of it isn't expanded on, but I think that there is like a mention, or it is kind of addressed in the IPCC reports, that it is possible that we'll see more pandemics because of climate change. I mean, there's just so many dominoes that get, affected, ripple effects from climate change that we have yet to be able to fully understand. And this may be one of them. Like, we have an inkling of, the possibility of this, but as you say, it's very under-researched. That is just so gross, Tendera. I don't understand. Alright, so transitioning into this article over here. Just moving on from this one. I think this is a good follow-up, a good article to piggyback off this. Donzinger has been released, so that's good news for environmentalism. Climate change will force new animal encounters and boost viral outbreaks. Modeling studies the first to project how global warming will increase virus swapping between species. I'm going to assume that this has to do with just the new migration patterns. Just the new migration patterns from animals and the way we've destroyed their habitat is going to be a factor. Usually vectors, like insects and stuff like that, will probably move and migrate. I'm going to assume also that as temperatures get warmer, it is more conducive to bacteria and whatnot. I don't know. We're going to find out. I'm just making predictions. And they also made an F and Law and Order episode about Oxford shooting. It's been 5 months, not even a year, and they never got families' consent. We found out on the news. What? First of all, that show is still going, and second of all, yikes. That is horrifying. Why would they do that? Alright, let's see how right or wrong I was. Migrations and forced migrations of species, yes, that and a continued increase in animal agriculture, which is the opposite direction it's needing to go to mitigate these things. Okay, so I'm sort of right. All right, we're on base, we're on target, kind of. Let's see. Over the next 50 years, climate change could drive more than 15,000 new cases of mammals transmitting viruses to other mammals, according to a study published in Nature. It's being referenced here. It's one of the first to predict how global warming will shift wildlife habitats and increase encounters between species capable of swapping pathogens, and to quantify how many times viruses are expected to jump between species. Many researchers say that COVID pandemic probably started when a previously unknown coronavirus passed to a wild animal to a human, a process called zoonotic transmission. There was another study that came out that was very, very, very much in favor or pushing in the direction that it is most likely set that we actually experienced this COVID pandemic due to a zoonotic transmission, which is, it makes sense. They also believe that when, say, animals like bats are displaced by deforestation and human interaction, it causes stress, which weakens their immune system, which means they show more viral symptoms, which means more viral exchange and zoonotic jumps. Right. I think wasn't this the plot of Contagion, right? Wasn't that the plot of Contagion? Because like at the end of the movie, it shows the humans destroying the habitats, which made the bats flee, which put the bats which created a scenario where the bats encountered something. I forget what it was. It bit, or it came into contact with meat of some sort. I think it was a pork or fish, and then that jumped into patient zero, which started off the whole contagion. I think that was at the end of the movie. They revealed that it was because of human destruction of the natural habitat of the bat, that it forced them to have an encounter with another domestic species, which I can't remember. I think it was I'm pretty sure it was pork, but I can't remember. But this all makes sense. This is literally the plot of Contagion, I think. A previously unknown coronavirus passed from a wild animal to a human, a process called zoonotic transmission. A predicted rise in viruses jumping between species could trigger more outbreaks, posing a serious threat to human and animal health alike. The study warns, providing all the more reason for governments and health organizations to invest in pathogen surveillance and and to improve healthcare infrastructure. But we've got to fund the military budget. Psh, healthcare? What? What is that? The study is a critical first step in the understanding of the future risk of climate and land use change on the next pandemic, says Kate Jones, who models interactions between ecosystems and human health at University College London. The research predicts that much of the new virus transmissions will happen when species meet for the first time as they move to cooler locales because of rising temperatures. Right, so exactly as we were talking. Yeah, looks like I'm sort of, I would say about 60% on the money. Hey, Alio, how's it going? Howdy. I would say 60% on the money there. the move to cooler locales because of rising temperatures, and it projects that this will occur most often in species-rich ecosystems at high elevations, particularly areas in Africa and Asia, and in areas that are densely populated by humans, including Africa's Sahel region, India, and Indonesia. Assuming that the planet warms by no more than 2 degrees above pre-industrial temperatures in this century, a future predicted by some climate analysts, the number of first-time meetings between species will double by 2070, creating virus transmission hotspots. Oh man, this gets better. Probably, yes, it makes sense. Usually it's a case of, say, a stressed bat and it ends up coming into contact with, say, some live farm animal or whatever, which then infects those animals, and then there's a chance it can go from, say, like the big to human. I think the actual jump of bat to human is less common, understandably. You've probably also seen reports of latest of bird flu outbreaks because it's popular in the news just now, but that kind of thing happened constantly and just never gets reported, and it's very dangerous. I agree. Yeah, this is literally the plot of Contagion. Not even joking. And in fact, I'm gonna probably Google this here. Um, okay, there we go. This is much better. We're gonna go over this just to piggyback and kind of close that loop. Um, plot of not what plot of Contagion. Just now I'm curious. Okay, that's right. I was 100% correct. I was 100% correct. In a flashback to the spillover event, a bulldozer from Emhoff's company, which is the big company that was trying to kind of keep things down in the in the movie, company clears rainforest in China, which disturbs the bat. One bat finds a shelter in a pig farm, which drops an infected piece of banana that is consumed by the pig. The pig is then slaughtered and prepared by a chef who then, without washing his hands, transmits the virus to the original patient zero via a handshake. That's exactly what happens. So yeah, it's pretty much very, 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 very possible. But if people do not get vaccinated or are viral but don't social distance, that's what I care about. I mean, there's many more aspects. I think that like the whole point is to address this problem before it becomes, bigger, right? That's the whole thing. All right. So let me finish this one here and then we're going to finish this article here. Just kind of tie everything. Assuming that the planet warms by no more than 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial temperatures in this century, a future predicted by some climate analysis, the number of first-time meetings between species will double by 2070, creating virus transmission hotspots. This work provides us with more incontrovertible evidence that the coming decades will not only be hotter but sicker. Says Gregory Albury, a disease ecologist at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., and co-author of the study, which is referenced here, which you'll read the abstract. To make their predictions, Albert and his colleagues developed and tested models, ran simulations over a 5-year period. They combined models of virus transmission and species distribution under various climate change scenarios, focusing on mammals because of their relevance to human health. Sheesh. The team built a species distribution model to predict where mammals would move to find more livable habitats as the planet warms. The virus transmission model predicts the probability of a virus jumping between species for the first time by taking into account where species might meet as their habitat shifts and how closely related they are evolutionarily. Viruses are most likely to transmit between related species. That makes sense. The modeling seems technically impeccable, says Ignacio Morales Castilla, a global change ecologist at the University of Alcalá, Spain. Although he points out that forecasting exercises such as this sometimes need to include unrealistic assumptions, but he adds that the breadth and scope of the research and its ability to identify which parts of the world might be most at risk clearly stands out. Sheesh. One assumption the researchers had to make was about how far and wide species would spread as the climate changes. What factors, such as whether mammals can adapt to local conditions or physically cross barriers in landscapes, are difficult to predict. Right? Bats are projected to be involved in viral transmissions regardless of these factors, the study found. Thought to be part of the origins of COVID-19, bats are known reservoirs of viruses and make up about 20% of mammals. The team says that in parts because bats can fly, they are less likely to experience barriers to shifting their habitats. Right, which... Jesus. I'm sure the CDC or something had a report years ago saying that they were alarmed at the trends in zoonotic jumps too. It was one of those, this isn't just us tracking more diseases, they're actually just happening more and more often situations because there's always an increased rate due to better identification, but the rate is too fast to be explained by that. Yeah. I think even like wasn't there like a thing during the Obama years, which was quite a while ago at this point? I want to say 10 to 14 years ago, 10 to 12 years ago, where they were already predicting a major pandemic when it comes to a major pandemic that would be respiratory in nature. I mean, I'm pretty sure like they had kind of like an inkling of the possibilities. I'm just not sure that they were able to pin down the reason why. Right? I'm assuming that that's what's happening. Hold on, folks. Let me just take 1 second. Just so much stuff to do, folks. I'm gonna take a look at this. All right. Bats, yes. Because I mean, it's literally the story of contagion, right here. Spill over to humans. Although Jones applauds the study, she urges caution when discussing its implication to human health. Predicting the risk of viral jumps from mammals into humans is more tricky as these spillovers take place in a complex ecological and human socioeconomic environment. Right, but because science isn't like saying that this is absolute, it's giving the it's basically nudging to the idea that this is going to happen more frequently, or in other words, that the probability of this happening is going to increase as global warming increases, right? Like, it's not saying that it's absolute because science doesn't really speak that way. It's just gonna tell you that, well, it is most likely, probably, going to be more frequently as the temperature rises because of X, Y, and Z. Many factors could reduce the risks to human health, including increased investment in healthcare or a virus being unable to infect humans for some reason, which is possible. But researchers urge that there's no time to waste. Earth has already been warmed by more than 1 degree above pre-industrial temperatures, and this is driving species migration and disease swapping. It's happening and it's not preventable even in the best climate change scenarios. Right, because it's not, yeah, it's all, from what I understand so far, it's all based on the fact that, like, because of the habitat degradation and the planet heating forcing species to move, um, and come into contact with each other, then the risk of a pandemic starts to increase as that happens. Albert and one of his co authors, Colin Carson, a global change biologist also at Georgetown University, says that even though some increase in disease transmission is inevitable, that's no excuse for inaction. That's right. That is very true. The researchers call on governments and international communities to improve the monitoring and surveillance of wild animals and zoonotic diseases, particularly in future hotspots such as Southeast Asia. Improving health infrastructure is also essential, which I'm pretty sure that we touched on this in the IPCC report working group 2. They did touch on the fact that, like, having a good and robust healthcare system is just it just needs to be. As people begin to prepare and adapt to global warming, most efforts focus on activities such as halting deforestation or reinforcing seawalls, but Carlson says pandemic preparedness and disease surveillance are climate change adaptation too. I agree. I agree. And this is the story, the study here. Just really quick on the abstract. At least 10,000 virus species have the capacity to infect humans, but at present, the vast majority are circulating silently in wild animals. However, climate and land use change will produce novel opportunities for viral sharing among previously geographically isolated species of wildlife. In some cases, this will facilitate zoonotic spillover, a mechanistic link between global environmental change and disease emergence. Here, we simulate potential hotspots of future viral sharing using a phylogeographic model of mammal virus network and projection of geographic range shifts for 3,139 mammal species under climate change and land use scenario for the year 27. We predict that species will aggregate in new combinations at high elevations, in biodiversity hotspots, and in areas of high human population density in Asia and Africa, driving the novel cross-species transmissions of their viruses an estimated 4,000 times. Sheesh. Because of their unique dispersal capacity, bats account for the majority of novel viral sharing and are likely to share viruses along evolutionary pathways that facilitate future emergence in humans. Yeah. Surprisingly, we found that this ecological transition may already be underway, and holding warming under 2 degrees Celsius within the century will not reduce Jesus, will not reduce future viral sharing. Our findings highlight an urgent need to pair viral surveillance and discovery efforts with biodiversity survey tracking species range shifts, especially in tropical regions and that harbor the most zoonosis and are experiencing rapid warming. Yikes. Yeah. Jesus. That's pretty bleak. I'm not gonna lie. We're about to watch the plot of Contagion unfold in real life. If you guys want the study that's being cited, James Napper posted that up here, so I will just repost the article. That's okay. We'll go to this one too. Mr. gave me this one. Environmental lawyer targeted by Chevron freed after more than 2 years under house arrest. Sheesh. After 993 days, Steve Donzinger is finally free. On Monday, the embattled lawyer, who has been targeted by Chevron for years in a convoluted court struggle, finished a 6-month sentence, which came on the heels of more than 2 years under house arrest in his Manhattan apartment. The end of the saga is not without mixed emotions for Donzinger. Quote, I'm exhilarated to be able to fully live again and extremely excited to be able to make normal choices people in a free society get to make. He told me by phone on Monday. I'm also stunned that I just spent 2 years and 7 months of my life in detention in retaliation for my work in the climate justice field. Donzinger's story begins in 1993 in the Ecuadorian Amazon when he began representing a group of 30,000 indigenous people and farmers in a lawsuit against Texaco. The oil giant had set up shop drilling for crude oil in the region in the 70s, and over the next 2 decades spilled 60 million gallons of crude, around 80 times what was spilled in the 2010 Deepwater Horizon disaster, as well as depositing billions of gallons of toxic waste in unlined pits, turning the area into an oil-pooled wasteland and poisoning soil and local water supplies. Jesus, that's criminal. Texaco left the region and its mess behind in 1992 when its contract expired and locals decided to file a lawsuit. The case dragged on for 18 years, though through Chevron's 2000 purchase of Texaco, a transaction that made it the key defendant until 2011 when an Ecuadorian court ordered Chevron to pay $18 billion in compensation, later reduced to $9.5 billion. Chevron, which still has not paid a cent of this fine, immediately began fighting the ruling. A key cornerstone of its efforts to demonize Donzinger. Internal emails from Chevron sent in 2009 read, in 2012, Chevron launched a racketeering suit against Donzinger and other two plaintiffs. Our strategy to demonize Donzinger. This film provides a great opportunity to do so. Jesus. Yikes. I think this should be spread around, in my opinion. The abuses of power enacted in this case are so far-fetched as to be almost unbelievable. I think that's the same word that I use. Shortly before trial, Chevron dropped any monetary claims it was making, which deprived Donzinger and other defendants of the right to a jury trial. What? Presiding over the case was New York U.S. District Court Judge Lewis Kaplan, who in the courtroom called Chevron a company of considerable importance to our economy, and banned Donzinger and other defendants from bringing up Chevron's pollution in the Amazon during the trial. What? Oh my goodness. That is just unbelievable. The oil giant's main evidence relied on the testimony of a disgraced Ecuadorian judge, Alberto Guerra, who had accepted hundreds of thousands of dollars from Chevron and met with Chevron's lawyer a whopping 53 times before the trial. Guerra later admitted that he lied on his testimony. Kaplan found Donzinger and other defendants guilty in 2014. Jesus Christ. That is just wild. What happened, quote, what happened to me goes way beyond just me. It was part of a design by the fossil fuel industry to create a playbook to silence those who advocate effectively and successfully against major polluters who are destroying the planet. Yeah, I would agree with that statement. The saga didn't end there and somehow even got more twisted in 2019. Kaplan asked federal prosecutors to bring contempt of court charges against Donzinger for refusing to hand over his electronic devices and passports during the trial. Donzinger said giving his electronics to the court would betray private client information. After public prosecutors declined to press charges, Kaplan pulled an unprecedented move of assigning a team of private prosecutors to prosecute Donzinger, the first time this has happened in U.S. judicial history. Wait, explain to me what the hell are private prosecutors? Someone please explain to me how that's even a thing. This is news to me. This is news to me. I've never heard this in my entire life. Private prosecutors? Okay. The first time this has happened in U.S. judicial history, the team Kaplan chose was led by an attorney who at the time worked for a law firm with a history of representing Chevron. Kaplan went against the usual procedure for these cases and also handpicked a judge. What? Are you kidding me? Handpicking the judge, Loretta Preska, who had a history of positive rulings in favor of energy companies, oil companies, and serves as an advisor to the Federalist Society. Oh, good memes. Oh man, the memes just keep stacking on each other. A pro-business group that has benefited from donations from Chevron. Preska put Donzinger under house arrest before the trial, claiming he had represented a flight risk. Okay. While the case is certainly a wild example of justice run amok, it has a chilling implication for what could be possible for a private company looking to use the court to silence its critics. Yeah, but like, how is it possible to have a private prosecution team where they get to handpick the judge? What? What? Never in my life would I think like, dang, this shouldn't even be possible. Well, the case is certainly a wild example of justice run amok. It has a chilling implication for what could be possible for a private company looking to use the courts to silence the critics. What happened to me goes way beyond just me. It was part of a design by the fossil fuel industry and some of its high-priced lawyers to create a playbook to silence those who advocate effectively and successfully against major polluters who are destroying the planet. True. Last July, Preska found Donzinger, of course, a hand-picked judge, guilty of misdemeanor charges of criminal contempt. A private prosecution, somehow, with a hand-picked judge, was allowed to proceed in this manner. That is just unbelievable. In November, the UN High Commissioner on Human Rights, the world's top human rights body, ruled that Donzinger's house arrest was illegal under international law and called on the US to release him. Yeah, okay. 6 international jurists that made up the UN body said in a brief that they were appalled by the uncontested allegations in this case, adding that Donzinger's criminal charges and arrest appeared to be retaliation for his work as a legal representative of indigenous communities. Despite the UN ruling, Judge Preska sentenced to Donzinger, handpicked, Judge Preska sentenced Donzinger to 6 months in prison, the maximum sentence, a day after the UN issued its brief. Donzinger was returned to house arrest in December of 2021 under a pandemic early release program. Despite the injustices foisted on him for the past few years, Donzinger sees a particular victory against Chevron and a newfound attention to his case and Chevron's pollution in the Amazon. They tried to turn me into a symbol as part of this intimidation campaign. I would argue that what ended up happening is the exact opposite of what they intended. The Streisand effect, so to speak. I would argue that what ended up happening was the opposite of what they intended. They thought that they could crush me, but they created a situation where now I have a platform and a voice. I think they have a real problem now. Well, yeah, this case means that America is dead and broken. Even our courts are effed. I mean, yeah, like if you can hire a private, like that's breaking my brain right now. That's blowing my mind that this is even a thing. How could a person, a corporation, have the capacity, or anyone have the capacity to hire, I guess, a private prosecution where you get to handpick the judge? What? That is just unfathomable to me in any normal functioning, society. That's just like, it's breaking my brain that this is even a thing, that this was even a possibility, is breaking my brain. The fact that nobody really knows this is happening, it's terrifying. Yeah. I only found out that he was just released because somebody in chat yesterday told me. And a lot of like the normal kind of news outlets, like the mainstream kind of news outlets, aren't really touching this story at all. Like, I'm sorry, but like if you go to like, Google News or something like that, nothing. Nothing. Oh, that's a good meme. President Manchin endorses a Republican slams to build back better in West Virginia GOP primary ad. That's a okay. That's a good one. It's actually a bit sad that Amazon named themselves that. Now people can't Google the devastation there. Do you think it was on purpose? I don't know. I don't know, Dr. Dragon Rider. I think it's like maybe, but you could add some keywords if you want to find out what the destruction of the Amazon is. Just put rainforest. How about more corruption? Yeah, well, it's just unbelievable to me. I knew about this. I think he posted about it. Who, Donzinger? I literally just found out about this yesterday, and it's like there's not many articles on it at all. I mean, this one seems pretty decent. Thank you, mister. But what happened in Chicago? Oh my god. A weekend, 32 shot in one weekend. Wild. Yikes. That's just sad. That's just depressing. The struggle isn't over now that his sentence is done. Donzinger and his supporters, which include leading organizations like Amnesty International, as well as several lawmakers in Washington, are working to secure a pardon for Donzinger from President Biden. A pardon, he explained, wouldn't set a legal precedent to prevent a case like this from happening again, but it could discourage other judges from trying out the same tactics on the next person who dares to stand up for the big oil. I mean, like, I don't even know what to what to do with this one. Several lawmakers, no names, yeah. If it was a private, like, prosecutor with a handpicked judge, I don't know. In one incident, or is this MSN making Chicago look bad? Because in NYC, I guarantee there's more people, but in Chicago matters because... No. It wasn't one incident. That was not the implication. It was the whole weekend. During the whole weekend. Twitch is trending on Twitter. Don't know why. Good question. We'll take a look at that. What Chevron and the industry want to do is make this the new normal. He said this will happen again unless people wake up and stop it from happening again. I agree. I agree 100%. I agree 100%. Hamather resubscribing for 2 months. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that support. You guys have been so kind today. Thank you. So yeah, this is not normal. This is not okay. And people should really spread the word far and wide on this one. It isn't right that a company or anyone who has enough money, enough power to gather up a private prosecution with handpicked judges, arrests people and keep them in house arrest or whatnot for years. That's not how this works at all. That's not how this should work at all. Um, it's just unbelievable to me that this is like completely fine. It blows my mind. I'm still broken by the fact that there could be a scenario where somebody could be arrested and kept in their home for 993 days because somebody, in this case a company, had so much money that they could hire a private prosecution with handpicked judges. I mean, that's just unbelievable to me. Unfreaking believable. And I'm gonna repost this link here too. Please feel free to check that out. Alright. Alio is saying Twitter is trending. Where do I find the trending stuff? Trending. Where do I see trend? Like, I don't see Twitch trending. Entertainment? News? For me? I don't see it. It's under what's happening? Where the heck do I see that? Oh, I see. No, I don't see Twitch trending though. I see a bunch of other stuff. I don't know. If you find out, let me know, because I don't see anything here. After hearing Trump's rally yesterday, Trump was slurring, adding S's to words and other folksy nonsense. Well, uh, yeah, I don't know. It seems like so boring to cover the same thing over and over again. I can't watch another broken record. It's the same old story. Below White House Correspondents' Dinner? I don't even show that. I mean, we all have different, I think, feeds, depending on what you follow. I assume. I don't know. If you find out, let me know what's going on. Alright, folks, we've got, Twitch got rid of the desktop app and is changing ad revenue split. What? What does that mean? As Trump, okay, so here we are. A Georgia official frantically texted Mark Meadows as Trump badgered Secretary of State to, quote, find votes. This was the very perfect phone call. Remember, folks? As Donald Trump badgered Georgia Secretary Brad Raffensperger of an hour-long call to find the votes necessary to flip the battleground state, a Raffensperger aide fired a plea for help. Need to end this call. I don't think this will be productive much longer. Yeah. The little notice text messages included in a recent court filing provided deeper look provided a deeper look at the chaos that ensued as the former president pressed Raffensperger to help prove Trump won in Georgia, a state Trump lost. That call now stands at the center of an investigation into Trump, which is set to advance this week in Atlanta. Area prosecutors convened a special grand jury to determine whether any of Trump's actions related to the Georgia election or those of his allies were criminal. Yep, so that's where we're at, folks. As I advised, I am going to keep covering this as new information comes out, and this is a new piece of information. Under a normal and just system, nobody should be above the law. And that means nobody. So, we'll see. In my opinion, no consequences are probably going to come from this, but hey. We'll still keep reporting on it. Alright, folks, we're coming in to the home stretch. We've got this Working Group 3 to go through, this press conference. and then we need to go over, I think, the summary at some point, if I can find it. I didn't realize Twitch had a desktop app. I didn't know that. I thought you just go to the website and that's it. What I'm interested in is what other changes are they making?
Name of your organization, your own name, and the question you have. I would like to also stress that we will try to accommodate as many questions as possible. We will have about 90 minutes for the entire press conference, but it is likely that, unfortunately, we will not be able to go through all of them. I would like now to welcome Mr. Abdallah Moqsid, the Secretary of the IPCC, to introduce today's event and speakers.
Thank you, dear Andre. Today, the IPCC releases its report on the mitigation of climate change. Soon, you will hear from the scientists themselves when they present the main finding of this report. This cycle, the sixth cycle, was the most intense of all the IPCC history, with 8 reports, and we have already released 7 of them. We have finalized the reports from the 3 working groups in unprecedented conditions during the COVID-19 pandemic. The report released today comes at the end of this third successful virtual approval plenary. Virtual approval plenary. The commitment and years of hard work of hundreds of scientists around the world and 195 governments made this possible. Let me also stress that the IPCC ability to deliver rely on the voluntary and generous contribution of states. I am incredibly honored to welcome and introduce our distinguished guest speakers. First, we will see the video message from the United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres. We will also hear from our IPCC Chair, Professor Hussein Lee. We will also hear from the World Meteorological Organization Secretary General, Professor Peter Talas, and the United Nations Environment Programme Executive Director, Inger Andersen. We will also hear from the scientists. Dr. Jimsky, co-chair of Working Group 3. We will hear also from Professor Diana Erg-Vorsatz, vice chair of Working Group 3, and we will hear also from Dr. Ramon Pich-Madruga, vice chair of Working Group 3. We will now see the video message from the United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres.
The jury has reached a verdict, and it is damning. This report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is a litany of broken climate promises.
True.
It is a file of shame, cataloging the empty pledges that put us firmly on track towards an unlivable world. We are on a fast track to climate disaster. Major cities underwater, unprecedented heat waves, terrifying storms, widespread water shortages, the extinction of 1 million species of plants and animals. And this is not fiction or exaggeration. It is what science tells us will result from our current energy policies. We are on a pathway to global warming of more than double the 1.5 degree limit agreed in Paris. Some government and business leaders are saying one thing, but doing another. Simply put, they are lying. And the results will be catastrophic. This is a climate emergency.
Oh my God, this guy's coming out swinging. This guy's not mincing any words. He's coming out swinging and swinging hard. The reality is this, and I think that the reason why they're doing it this way is because this is the Hail Mary, essentially. So they're being as explicit, as forward as possible. This dude is not mincing any words whatsoever. That tells me that the situation is much more, it's definitely dire. For language to be used like this, yeah.
Climate scientists warn that we are already perilously close to tipping points that could lead to cascading and irreversible climate impacts. But high-emitting governments and corporations are not just turning a blind eye. they are adding fuel to the flames.
Right.
They are choking our planet based on their vested interests and historic investments in fossil fuels, when cheaper, renewable solutions provide green jobs, energy security, and greater price stability.
True.
We left COP26 in Glasgow with a naive optimism based on new promises and commitments. But the main problem, the enormous growing emissions gap, was all but ignored. And the science is clear. To keep the 1.5 degree limit agreed in Paris within reach, we need to cut global emissions by 45% this decade. But current climate pledges would mean a 14% increase in emissions. And most major emitters are not taking the steps needed to fulfill even these inadequate promises. Climate activists are sometimes depicted as dangerous radicals. But the truly dangerous radicals are the countries that are increasing the production of fossil fuels.
True.
Investing in new fossil fuel infrastructure is moral and economic madness. Such investments will soon be stranded assets, a blot on the landscape, and a blight on investment portfolios. But it doesn't have to be this way. Today's report is focused on mitigation, cutting emissions. It sets out viable, financially sound options in every sector that can keep the possibility of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees alive. First and foremost, we must triple the speed of
the possibility. Not that it's going to happen, the possibility. So to even have a shot in the dark here, to even, this is legitimately a Hail Mary. That's what he's trying to tell us. Undeniably. Undeniably, he's trying to tell us, listen, folks, we've got to do this, and we've got to do this now.
Shift to renewable energy. And that means moving investments and subsidies from fossil fuels to renewables now.
True.
In most cases, renewables are already far cheaper. It means governments ending the funding of coal, not just abroad, but at home.
True.
And it means climate coalitions made up of developed countries, multilateral development banks, private financial institutions, and corporations with adequate technologies supporting major emerging economies in making this shift. It means protecting forests and ecosystems as powerful climate solutions.
Yes.
It means rapid progress in reducing methane emissions. And it means implementing the pledges made in Paris and Glasgow. Leaders must lead. But all of us can do our part. We owe a debt to young people, civil society, and indigenous communities for sounding the alarm and holding leaders accountable. We need to build on their work to create a grassroots movement that cannot be ignored. If you live in a big city, a rural area, or a small island state, if you invest in the stock market, if you care about justice and our children's future, I am appealing directly to you. Demand that renewable energy is introduced now at speed and at scale. Demand an end to coal-fired power. Demand an end to all fossil fuel subsidies. Today's report comes at a time of global turbulence. Inequalities are at unprecedented levels. The recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic is scandalously uneven. Inflation is rising. And the war in Ukraine is causing food and energy prices to skyrocket.
Yes.
But increasing fossil fuel production will only make matters worse.
Right. And, yeah. The system is working, guys. It's good. It's great.
Choices made by countries now will make or break the commitment to 1.5 degrees.
True.
A shift to renewables will mend our broken global energy mix and offer hope to millions of people suffering climate impacts today. Climate promises and plans must be turned into reality and action now.
Yeah, again, he's just stressing the importance of actually taking this seriously, and he's not mincing any words here. This ain't working. It's just not.
It's time to stop burning our planet and start investing in the abundant renewable energy all around us.
Jesus.
I now invite the chair of the IPCC, Dr. Huesung Lee, to take the floor.
We have just heard a very important message from the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. The IPCC report before us today is a powerful evidence that we have the great potential to mitigate climate change. We are at a crossroads. This is the time for action. We have the tools and know-how to limit warming and secure a livable future. Today's report marks the completion of the scientific trilogy. It is the last piece of the 3 IPCC Working Group contributions to the 6th Assessment Report, which will conclude with a synthesis report to be released later this year. This Working Group 3 report provides the most recent scientific knowledge on the mitigation of climate change. It complements the report on the state of global warming.
Hey, KTS Shine, how's it going? Yeah, I think so. Ain't nothing wrong with that. It blows my mind that oil companies are straight up given money. I can see beef but oil, Dems can attack that. Even Republicans would be against living free. Oh yeah, but they don't see it that way. Right, they don't see it that way. Dr. Dragon Rider.
Which was released last summer, and the report on the climate risks and adaptation released just last month. Together, they confirm that IPCC is the authoritative scientific...
The Democratic Party is just completely lost on this one. Completely lost on this issue. Like, to say the least, just speaking on climate change, they're not... Some of their rhetoric is good, but their actions, especially now that they're, they're in some positions of power, the Democratic Party is doing very little in comparison of what they could be pushing for.
Voice of the United Nations on climate change, and that the IPCC is the unique interface between climate science and policymaking. I'm confident that the policymakers around the world, especially the COP27 in Egypt later this year, will benefit greatly from the 4 IPCC reports, and that these reports will be the backbone of the climate deliberations, decision-making and action on a global, regional and national level. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. We will now see a video message from the WMO Secretary General Peter Vitalis.
Very high on the global agenda as well. Dear participants of the IPCC Working Group 3 press conference, dear
KTS
you have
Shine.
been heading the writing team, and I'd like to thank also the UK government for all the support that you have given for the success of this report. The road has been a little bit bumpy, and you have been forced to work much harder than you expected, but I think the end result is great. We are at the moment facing very challenging times. We have learned from about this brutal war in Ukraine, which also has an impact on the media environment, and that has meant that attention to this long-term major challenge for the welfare of humankind and biosphere has been a little bit lower than it used to be before this war. And this war that is ongoing in Ukraine, it has an impact also outside of Ukraine. It has an impact on food security, prices of food, and also prices of energy, and this is going to hit especially.
It's increasing the prices of fossil fuels, which I think is like a weird choice of words. But okay, India is currently experiencing really bad food shortages. I think that people are starting to starve because of this conflict. Yeah, no, this is all bad. This is all bad. The news cycle is being constantly taken over by anything but climate change. The articles are so far and few between.
Less developed countries, as is the case of climate change as well. We have already seen rises of energy prices, both electricity and fossil fuels, and that's very high on the global agenda as well. And in the best case, this would speed up the reduction of the use of fossil energy and also speed up green transition. In the worst case, interest to mitigate climate change will be challenged because of this development. But let's concentrate on the results of this excellent report, which form very good basis for crucially needed raise of the ambition level of the climate mitigation. Although I would like to praise the results of the COP26, where G7 and European Union countries made pledges to keep us on 1.5 degrees track, we should also keep in mind that the rest of the G20 countries, including the BRICS countries, were not in a position to offer such pledges that would keep us on such a track. This report today shows what are the means and most effective means and most affordable means in the different types of economies to enhance the crucially needed pace of mitigation efforts. I hope that this information will be used by the governments in different parts of the world to proceed with mitigation. The Working Group 2 report, which was published some weeks ago, was showing that every corner of the Earth is already affected by climate.
Sorry about that, folks. This guy is using much more softer language. much different set of rhetoric than the opener.
Change And the report today shows that every region in the world had also an impact on climate change problem today. Classically, we have been thinking that only the developed countries which have used most of the fossil resources so far are responsible for that. But if you take the land use into account, especially deforestation in Latin America, Africa, and Southern Asia, it's shown that they have also had a major impact on the climate problem, which is demonstrating that we need global efforts to be successful in climate mitigation. And besides that, there's also need to pay attention to climate adaptation. We know that the negative trend in climate will continue for the coming decades anyhow, and melting of glaciers and sea level rise for the coming century.
Yeah.
We just celebrated the World Meteorological Day on 23rd of March, and there United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres was tasking WMO to lead the preparation of major early warning service package to be approved by the COP27 hosted by Egypt this November in Sharm el-Sheikh. Only half of the 193 members of the WMO have proper early warning services in place, which means that ever-growing impacts are causing dramatically growing economic and human losses. We have also drastic gaps in weather, climate, and hydrological observing systems, which means that the early warning services, especially in African, Caribbean, and Pacific countries, are in very poor shape. There's an urgent need to invest in basic weather, climate, and water observing infrastructures to enhance the early warning service abilities of especially LDC and SIDS countries. UN aims at reaching 100% global coverage of early warning services by the end of 2028 through investments and capacity building of meteorological, climate, and hydrological infrastructures and education of related national expertise. So to conclude, we have two urgent challenges ahead of us: adaptation and mitigation. Both financing, visionary political decisions, and concrete actions are needed for the sake of the welfare of current and future generations and our biosphere. Thank you.
I will now kindly invite Inge Anderson, the UNEP, the United Nations Environment Programme Executive Director, to take the floor.
Thank you so much, and to all members of the press, welcome. And of course, to Hosong Lee, who is the chair of IPCC, and certainly to James Gia, Diana Erj-Bosatz, and Raman Pix-Madruga, who is first co-chair and vice chairs of this working group. Today we present an important report, part of the trilogy that Petri referenced in his recording. As you know, this is the third report from the IPCC during this current assessment cycle, and it now completes the full picture of the climate crisis that is facing humanity. And as we heard from the Secretary General, it is not a pretty picture.
No.
The first two IPCC reports told us that climate change is here and now and causing huge disruptions in the natural world and to human well-being. This report tells us that we're still not doing enough to cut greenhouse gas emissions, confirming the findings of UNEP's 2021 emissions gap report. The last 2 decades saw the highest increase in emissions in human history, even though we know how much trouble we're in. The next decade cannot follow the same pattern if we are to hold warming this century to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Half measures will not halve greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, which is what we need to do. And we all need to go in on this. The IPCC
that's the thing though, like the language being used here is unambiguous. There's no if, ands, or buts about it. Doesn't seem like that it doesn't seem very murky what she's saying and what the initial gentleman was saying is we need to do everything that we can right now, whatever means necessary. Whatever technologies that we have right now need to be deployed at speed and scale for us to kind of maybe sort of hopefully kind of perhaps have a chance.
That we have the knowledge and the technology to get this done through a rapid shift from fossil fuels to renewable and alternative fuels, through moving from deforestation to restoration, through backing nature in our landscapes, oceans, and cities, through transforming our cities into green and clean spaces, and through behavior changes to address the demand side of the equation. Now, such an opportunity did
But
present
she's
itself when countries rolled off their docket stimulus packages to help kickstart economies when we faced COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah, what she's referring to is the economic side, right? This like consume, 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 consume. This is just not sustainable.
But on the green scorecard, we failed, loud and clear. Once again, we now, today, find ourselves with an opportunity for some as countries seek out alternative sources of energy. Immediate needs must be met, yes, to heat homes and to keep lights on. But as we rethink hydrocarbon suppliers our dependency on fossil fuels, the solution has to be to kickstart the transition to renewable and cleaner sources of energy. The next climate COP in Sharm el-Sheikh must bring more ambitious climate pledges and long-term strategies for 2050 to help drive some.
Well, it's not just about like more aggressive or better pledges. It's about like the actual palpable policies that get deployed, right? That's what it is.
Such shifts. But increased action must begin this year, not next year, this month, not next month, and indeed today, not tomorrow. Otherwise, we will, as the UN Secretary General put it, continue to sleepwalk into a climate catastrophe. Thank you.
Thank you very much for these thoughtful remarks. I would now like to invite Dr. Hosung Lee, the chair of the IPCC, to open the official presentation of the report.
Thank you, Andre. This critically important Working Group 3 contribution assesses progress made in mitigation and options available for the future. It is looking at enabling conditions across sectors and systems in the aspects of the technological, environmental, economic, and social dimensions. Building on the findings of Working Group 1 and Working Group 2, this report gives us options for solution. It offers strategies to tackle the critical questions of our time. How can the world reduce greenhouse gas emissions? How can the world speed up the emissions reductions in a just and equitable manner? How can the buildings, transport, cities, agriculture, livestock, and energy sector to be a part of the solutions to lowering emissions? I'm encouraged by the increasing number of countries taking ambitious climate actions. There are policies, regulations, and market instruments that are proving effective. If these are scaled up and applied more widely, they can support deep emissions reductions and stimulate innovation. The Working Group 3 co-chairs and vice chairs will present the main findings of the report. Now I hand over to the Working Group 3 co-chair, Dr. Jim Skee, who will present the details of the report.
Okay, thank you, Huesung. And before I start, I would like to thank all of the authors who spent countless hours working on this report on a voluntary basis under extremely difficult circumstances given the COVID pandemic. I would also like to thank my fellow co-chair, Priyadarshi P.R. Shukla, who unfortunately can't be with us today. We've actually been shoulder to shoulder for the last 5 years to guide the work on this report. In his place, I'm actually joined by two of the Working Group 3 Vice Chairs, Diana Urgavorsats and Ramon Pix-Madruga, and together we are pleased to present the findings of this Working Group 3 assessment of the mitigation of climate change. Now, our assessment was prepared by 278 authors from 65 countries. We reviewed more than 18,000 scientific papers and considered close to 60,000 individual comments from governments and experts as part of the drafting process. And all of this feedback has helped to strengthen the report. So in the next 20 minutes, we're going to set out our key findings, showing where we are in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, where we're headed, and what action we can take to limit global warming. Now, the reality is that greenhouse gas emissions, which are causing global warming, are at their highest levels in human history.
Jesus.
Emissions in 2019 were about 12% higher than they were in 2010 and 54% higher than in 1990.
Jesus.
So we are definitely not on track to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. But there is increased evidence of climate action, and the average annual rate of growth in global emissions has slowed in the last decade, from 2.1% per year in the early part of this century to 1.3% per year between 2010 and 2019. And this decline in growth is particularly noticeable in the energy and industry sectors, where the rate of growth has more than halved. Despite this progress, our assessment concludes that unless there are immediate and deep emission reductions across all sectors, limiting warming to 1.5 degrees will be beyond reach. Some countries have achieved a steady decrease in emissions over several years at rates consistent with limiting warming to 2 degrees, and a growing number of cities are setting net zero target. An increased range of policies and laws have enhanced energy efficiency, reduced rates of deforestation, and accelerated the deployment of renewable energy. And climate laws that result in reduced or avoided emissions are present in 56 countries, covering more than half of global emissions. One notable success is around renewable energy. Since 2010, there have been sustained decreases in unit costs, with reductions of 85% for solar energy, 55% for wind power, and 85% for batteries. And in some cases, costs have fallen below those of fossil fuels. And at the same time, we've seen big increases in installed capacity, as this figure shows. Now, looking at policies that were implemented by December 2020, we conclude that, without strengthening mitigation efforts, greenhouse gas emissions are projected to lead to warming of 3.2 degrees.
Jesus.
In the scenarios we assessed, limiting warming to 1.5 degrees requires global greenhouse gas emissions to peak before 2025 at the latest.
To peak before 2025, that's 3 years from now. I believe we went over that article a couple of weeks ago. That's 3 years. And I don't know about you folks, but I'm not too confident that in 3 years we will get our collective-ish together, everybody, to do what is necessary, unfortunately.
And be reduced by 43% by 2030. Emissions from methane, a short-lived but very potent greenhouse gas, would also need to be reduced by about a third over the same period. And even if we do this, it is almost inevitable that we will at least temporarily exceed 1.5 degrees warming, but we could return below this level by the end of the century. Now, limiting warming to around 2 degrees still requires global emissions to peak before 2025 at the latest, and be reduced by about a quarter by 2030. Now, the temperature will stabilise when we reach net zero carbon dioxide emissions. So to limit warming to around 1.5 degrees requires reaching net zero carbon dioxide emissions in the early 2050s, and for 2 degrees, carbon dioxide emissions would have to be reduced to net zero in the early 2070s. Deep and sustained reductions of other gases would also be
actual net zero, not the greenwashed version of the term, which is kind of annoying because it seems like net zero has been co-opted, but what they're referring to is actual net zero, like not the greenwash corpo speak.
Be required. So how do we go about reducing these emissions? And to answer this question, let me hand over to Diana.
Thank you, Jim. I'm Diana Uger-Forsatz, one of the vice chairs of Working Group 3. What I would like to do now is to take you through the options that are available in each sector to combat climate change. And yes, in every sector there are options available that can at least halve emissions by 2030 and keep open the possibility of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees. Let's walk through these. The energy sector accounts for about a third of all emissions, and major transitions are required to limit global warming. This will involve
cheeseburger freedom, howdy,
use,
welcome,
low or no carbon
morning.
energy systems, widespread electrification, use of alternative fuels such as hydrogen and sustainable biofuels, use of carbon capture and storage, and improved energy efficiency. Transitioning to a low carbon energy sector is expected to cut down international trade in fossil fuels. Energy efficiency and reductions in energy consumption can be achieved using digital technologies. In this way, it is also possible to decentralize an energy network so that power comes from multiple, localized energy networks rather than one main electricity grid. Electricity systems powered by renewables are becoming increasingly viable, but it will be challenging to supply the entire energy system in this way. Changes to our lifestyles and behavior can reduce our carbon footprint, as well as improve our health and well-being. There is untapped potential here to bring down global emissions by between 40 and 70% by 2050, but only if the necessary policies, infrastructure, and technologies are in place. Of the 60 actions we assessed in this report, On an individual level, the biggest contribution comes from switching to walking and cycling, and using electrified transport. Other effective options include reducing air travel and adapting our houses. Shifting towards balanced, plant-based diets is an option. Wealthier individuals have the highest potential for reductions, as investors, consumers, role models, and professionals. While there is mitigation potential in many regions of the world, in some places, people require additional housing, energy, and resources for human well-being. To be effective, lifestyle changes will need to be supported by systemic changes across every aspect of society, including transport, buildings, industry, and land use. Looking at the transport sector, reducing demand plays an important part in reducing emissions, and low-carbon technologies are also key. Electric vehicles offer the greatest potential, as long as they are combined with low or zero carbon electricity sources.
Right.
Advances in battery technologies could assist in the electrification of trucks and complement conventional electric rail systems.
Yes, but also it needs to be accessible and affordable so that people can actually buy these, electric vehicles and take away the gifts, the freebies, the free money, subsidies that these fossil fuel industries get.
In aviation and shipping, which are harder to decarbonize, alternative fuels such as low-emission hydrogen and biofuels will be needed. Overall, there is substantial potential for emissions reductions, but this depends on decarbonizing the power sector.
Yeah, that's true.
Cities and other urban areas account for more than 2/3 of global emissions if we take into account what is produced in the city and brought in from elsewhere through energy and products. And there is significant potential for emissions reductions. In all cities, better urban planning is key. 3 other broad strategies have been found to be effective. These include sustainable consumption and production of goods and services, electrification, and improving carbon uptake and storage in cities, for example, with trees, lakes, green roofs, and permeable surfaces. In buildings, it is possible to reach net zero emissions in 2050. Action in this decade is critical to fully capture this potential. This will involve retrofitting existing buildings and using effective mitigation technologies in those that are yet to be built. This requires ambitious policy packages, which may incorporate efficient design and use of space,
and materials,
appliances, and the use of renewables.
Yep. Hemp.
There's an increasing number of net zero and net zero energy and net zero carbon buildings in almost all climates. This has come about from
people in rural areas will have to be given subsidies to convert, mostly for metro areas. Electric bikes and trains could serve as main transport if well connected, but another obstacle is forcing companies to be more settled in populated areas rather than rural, where it's easy to exploit labor. Yeah, there's a few different factors playing into that. But yeah, definitely there's got to be an aggressive, really, as this states, an ambitious policy package that kind of really starts to address these problems, right? Without the political will from the ground up, from local to state to then national, it's just not going to happen.
Construction and retrofitting. More could be done to reduce emissions in this sector if renovation rates and retrofitting were improved. Reducing emissions in industry will involve using materials and energy more efficiently, reusing and recycling products, and minimizing waste. These approaches are underused in policies and industrial practice at present. For basic materials, including steel, building materials, and chemicals, low to zero greenhouse gas production processes are at their pilot or near commercial stage. In some cases, they are at commercial stage, but not yet established through industrial practice. This sector accounts for about 1/4 of global emissions. Achieving net zero will be challenging and will require new production processes, low and zero emissions electricity, hydrogen, and, where necessary, carbon capture and storage. To counterbalance hard to eliminate emissions, for example, from agriculture, aviation, and some industrial processes, requires carbon dioxide removal. These methods remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and store it on land, underground, or in the ocean. There are biological methods that can store carbon, such as reforestation and soil carbon management, and these are widely practiced. New technologies, such as direct air capture and storage, require more research, upfront investment, and proof of concept at larger scales before they can be widely used. Carbon dioxide removal is essential to achieve net zero. For carbon dioxide removal to work effectively, agreed methods for measuring, reporting, and verification are required. And finally, agriculture, forestry, and other land use can provide large-scale emissions reductions and remove and store carbon dioxide at scale. This can be done by protecting and restoring natural ecosystems, including forests, peatlands, coastal wetlands, savannas, and grasslands. Improved and sustainable crop and livestock management can also play a part. Land provides us with so much, for example, food, nature, and our livelihoods. These competing demands have to be carefully managed. But land can only do so much in terms of removing and storing carbon, and cannot compensate for delayed emission reductions in other sectors. To look at how we can strengthen and restore.
I love that the IPCC tells us the truth. The thing that troubles me is that the recommendations will take many decades, huge work, replacement, and the costs are immense. I mean, the cost of not doing it will be far more greater than the cost of actually doing it. So that's like the usual counter-argument to that. The cost of not taking action now will be much more expensive later down the road. And it might take a lot of work, but the point being, and the sense of urgency that is being put forth, is because we need to get the ball rolling. We needed to get the ball rolling a long time ago. So that's what they're trying to kind of invoke, right? They're trying to tell us, like, look, this is it. This is our Hail Mary. We've got to get this. We've got to get our collective ish together. If we don't, well.
Strengthen the response and accelerate a low carbon transition, I would like to hand over to my fellow Vice Chair, Ramon.
Thank you, Diana. My name is Ramon Pix Madruga, Vice Chair of IPCC Working Group 3. I'm very pleased to share with you this last segment of our presentation. The next few years are critical if we want to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And what I would like to share with you now is precisely the way, some options to improve our chances to success. And I would like to start with finance. Our assessment shows that financial flows are a factor of 3 to 6 times lower than levels needed by 2030 to limit warming to below 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2 degrees Celsius. But there is sufficient global capital available and liquidity to close investment gaps. Clear signaling from government and the international community, including a strong alignment of public sector finance and policies, is critically important. The challenge of closing gaps is widest for developing countries due to the limited capacities of these countries, particularly the less developed countries. Without taking into account the economic benefits of reduced adaptation costs or avoided climate impacts, global gross domestic product growth would be just a few percentage points lower in 2050 if we take the necessary actions to limit warming to 2 degrees Celsius or below compared to maintaining current policies. Let's turn our attention now to regulatory and economic instruments and policies which play a critical role in strengthening the response to climate change. Regulatory and economic instruments ranging from standards for vehicle efficiency and building codes to policies for industrial decarbonization to broad-based carbon taxes and emission trading systems have already proved effective in reducing emissions. Such measures
50% of people alive right now on this planet who are under 40 will die because of climate change unless Russia launches nukes, which I don't know about that. Then the climate will kill those of us who survive the nuclear war. Well, I mean, that is a whole other scenario. Bike shop, I don't know. One step at a time. One crisis at a time, please. I don't know. We also have hurdles of convincing people in rural areas that they need to live in metro areas to reduce individual transport needs, excluding farming and other industries where rural is necessary. I agree that the cost will be later if we don't act with our short-term populist political systems. There are very few votes for taking the pain now instead of later. Yeah, but these aren't there by just the political system, right? The political system is being influenced by the policies, the representatives, or in your case, I think the MPs, presidents, prime ministers. They're all being lobbied. It didn't come out of thin air. They're all being lobbied by the fossil fuel industry to make sure that they keep their positions. And the fossil fuel industry gets to keep calling the shots, essentially.
measures can be strengthened and expanded significantly. Policy packages and economy-wide packages are better able to achieve systematic change than individual policy instruments on their own. Ambitious and effective mitigation requires coordination across government, setting and implementing strategies and building consensus among disparate stakeholders. These efforts are particularly effective when built on engagement with civil societies, indigenous people, professional bodies, and businesses. In recent years, there has been enormous activities and significant progress in technology and innovation, which is reflected in this assessment report of Working Group 3. Investment and policies, especially for scientific training, as well as research and development, push forward low-emission technological innovation. Key to effective decision-making in assessing the potential benefits and risks of different technologies and approaches, understanding their implementation at scale, and identifying what stands in their way. Some options are technically viable, increasing cost-effective, and generally supported by the public, which enables development in many regions. Examples include solar energy, energy-efficient appliance, improved forest and crop management, and reduce food waste. Other options face barriers that need to be addressed before they can be implemented at scale. Adoption of low-emission technologies is slower in most developing countries, particularly the less developed countries, due to their limited capacities. In all countries, actions to limit global warming that result in wider benefits to societies can increase the pace, depth, and breadth of emission reductions. Accelerated and equitable climate action in mitigating climate change and adapting to climate change impact is critical to sustainable development.
True.
In this report, we show how mitigation goes hand in hand with achieving many of the sustainable development goals. We see that equity and just transitions can lead to deeper ambitions for accelerated climate action. Many countries and regions are already applying just transition principles. In our assessment, we look at how mitigation actions can lead to sustainable development. Here are two examples, and let me start with actions in urban areas. As we focus on just one option, green and blue infrastructure, we see that green roof and facade, networks of parks, and open space, wetlands, and urban agriculture can not only absorb and store carbon, but at the same time achieve many other sustainable development goals, as you can see with the square in these graphs. For example, they can reduce pressure on urban sewer systems, reduce flood risks, and heat island effects. They can also deliver health benefits from reduced air pollution. Focusing now on land use, avoiding deforestation, and sustainably managing soils, forests, and livestock can mitigate climate change.
True.
These actions align well with sustainable development and can also result in responsible production, improved livelihood, and food security. Potential conflicts between reducing emissions and sustainable development, particularly around land use, and the need to ensure access to food, water, and energy can be managed with the right policies, investment, and financial partnerships. This gives an insight into the wider benefits of mitigation. Our report provides a comprehensive assessment of all this. And for now, I would like to hand back to my colleague, Professor Jim Skee.
Okay, so I think that here is a good place. We did a lot. We got through a lot of this. 47 minutes. I think maybe by well, depends on what happens tomorrow. Folks, please join the Discord to get any updates on the channel. I may need to be running an important errand tomorrow. So please check the Discord for any channel updates. Please go ahead and take 5 seconds to hit the subscribe button on the YouTubes. And please take 5 seconds to hit the follow button. It really does help us out. And you get 5 free emotes, including Paquita the cat. So please consider hitting the follow button. Spread the word far and wide that this is the chillest place to be. For news and politics, Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Join us for Saturday Catterdays around noon Eastern Time. Well, hello there, the Lost American Show. Howdy. I appreciate all the support. Thank you for all the subscriptions. You guys are what makes this channel grow. Thank you, Carlos. So good to have you here. See ya. Thank you. Cheeseburger Freedom Eagle. Thank you so much for hanging out. I appreciate that. Again, just make sure you hit the subscribe button on the YouTubes. There we go. Hit the subscribe button on the YouTube. Spread the word far and wide. Folks, please stay safe. Please take care of each other. I love you all, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. See ya. Alright, folks, hang in there. We're gonna go raid. So just hang tight. You take care, Zeoduke. Thank you so much for hanging out. Hang tight, folks. Let's see. Real Radhom. We haven't seen them in a while. Let's go and hang out with some chill vibes. Show some love to Real Radhom, alright? We're heading out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Also, stay tuned to see what happens. I'll keep you updated on the Discord. See ya!